lads, it's me. I'm having to film this in my kitchen today because my sister is using the living room to play Kingdom Hearts. I need everyone to know that my sister plays Kingdom Hearts, and I'm having to film this on my kitchen floor. Looking at Bellatrix. A little strange here today. There is my iron. Those of you who work with me will know I never use that. I got tagged in something really cool by my friend Sana from uni. And this cool thing, every day for 10 days you post a picture of a book that was like a major influence for you. You don't have to give an explanation, you just have to post a picture. However, I'm too lazy to commit to doing that every day, but I also ran out of ideas for videos, so it seemed like a good opportunity to do a video. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to rattle off my top 10 influential books that influenced me as a person and also as a writer. I'm not really doing them in a particular order, I just kind of wrote a list and, you know, we'll see where I go. First all-time favourite book is Goodnight Mr. Tom. I read this book when I was in primary 7 and to this day it's still my favourite book. I read it at least once a year and it still makes me cry. It is a book all about the idea that you can find family in unexpected places, and I think it is a book very much a lot of children need to read. My next influential book, Ariel. It is a collection of poems by the poet Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath had a very tragic life. She is very famous for having, you know, stuck her head in the oven. Her poems are incredibly beautiful. The collection Ariel is very tragic, quite dark, quite twisted, also very beautiful. She had a wonderful mind. This one is probably a bit cliche, 1984 by George Orwell. I think this book is a major influence on a lot of people, and to be honest with you, a lot of people that I know really should read it. It is a book that is very much like a step-by-step manual of how fascist governments come into play and how they use their power. Literally, it had the most shocking ending. Like, I remember when I read the ending, like, I was literally, like, I was floored. You know, I was floored. Everybody should read it. It's absolutely incredible. My next book is called 1Q84. The title was actually inspired by 1984. It's by a Japanese author, Murakami. Murakami is easily the most individual, weird, amazing author I've ever read. 1Q84 was probably the biggest influence of my life. It was the first book that really made me question what I consider to be morally correct. There's one line in the book which was, yes, she had broken the law, but she hadn't done anything wrong. And that fucking floored me. Like, for real, I was fucking shook. Like, I was baba shook. I couldn't get over that line. Like, I just remember rereading it over and over again because I totally agreed. I was like, yeah, this character has broken the law, but I don't really see anything wrong with what she did. It was pretty bad, so... My next influential book is A Midsummer Night's Dream by the one and only William Shakespeare. I read this book because it was actually mentioned in a children's book I was reading. And in the book they were like, yeah, this is about fairies. And I was like, I fucking love fairies because I was 8. So I read A Midsummer Night's Dream when I was 8 years old. I actually managed to follow the plotline pretty okay for an 8-year-old. I then saw it again when I was 12, actually saw it properly on a stage, and it very much inspired my love of Shakespeare. That's where it comes from. Always comes from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Great Gatsby, another one that might seem cliche, but The Great Gatsby very much for me is a huge turning point in kind of literature in the 1920s. Very much for me, it was a book that influenced and shaped my understanding of an unreliable narrator, as well as discussing the death of the Jazz Age. It is also one of those books where every character in it is a selfish bastard, and that is why I love it so fucking much. My biggest influence was a book called Passage by an author called Justin Cronin. It's a fairly modern book. Personally, I feel my generation, the millennial generation, have kind of ruined the whole vampire thing. I'm not going to mention which author in particular ruined it, but we ruined it. Anywho, The Passage was the first time I really read a book about kind of vampires, because I wouldn't say they're traditional vampires, they're very creature-like. The book, The Passage, is beautifully written, really good characters. Despite what I'm going to say is going to sound like a teenage dystopian novel, it's not. It's very much an adult book set in a post-apocalyptic world. There are these kind of vampire creatures, and the reason I love it so much is the fact that it has a lot of ties to kind of biblical passages, as well as kind of biblical allegory. For example, there are 13 vampires. One of them is a major big bad vampire with his 12 followers. Very much enjoy that kind of thing. Another book I absolutely love is, of course, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Frankenstein for me is a huge influence because it is very much agreed among pretty much all literary scholars. The actual concept of a science fiction novel started with Mary Shelley, with Frankenstein, which she wrote because she was super bored of fucking husband and Lord Byron, and let's be honest, I would be too. Lord Byron was very much the Drake of his day. Yeah, I'd be bored too. And I can't believe how bored she was that she just said she was going to invent an entire genre of literature. Mary Shelley is also just super cool because she is literally the most goth person to ever live. Like, she lost her virginity on her mother's grave, and then when her husband died, carried his calcified heart in a jar. Like, you can try so hard, you'll never be that goth, and you just need to accept it. Another book I loved, this was actually one I read at uni, Rant by Chuck Palahniuk. Chuck Palahniuk's most famous work is probably Fight Club, which then inspired the movie, that was then misunderstood by everybody that the actual book was making fun of. Rant, however, was very different. Rant for me was the first time I had ever read a book in a format where there was like no descriptions. Everything was dialogue because everything in it was an interview transcript, and it was amazing. I've never read anything like it. Rant for me is also very much like The Great Gatsby. In that The Great Gatsby, the main character Gatsby, we never saw the story from his point of view. However, in Rant, we see Rant's story from everyone's point of view, and I love that. I love when the main character is not actually at the centre of the story, and yet they somehow still are, but we never see it from their point of view. We never get to know their real thoughts, their real opinions. I love that. My last book is gonna be a Terry Pratchett one because I loved Terry Pratchett. To be honest, every single book nearly ended up being a Terry Pratchett one. I'll maybe do a separate one, my top 10 favourite Discworld books. For me, it was really hard to choose my favourite kind of Discworld book, but I decided to go with Thud. I love the Sam Vimes Discworld stories. Thud is a really good one. I love the way Terry Pratchett uses the dwarves to talk about issues that actually reflect real life. He uses the fights of the dwarves and the trolls to kind of discuss things like racial issues and cultural issues, but I also really like the fact that he used the dwarves very much to discuss things like sexism, gender, and even trans issues, and I think that is just a really cool thing. For me, it is one of the best Discworld books. It is very political, very funny, very, very progressive. Fun fact about Terry Pratchett, I have a tattoo of the Great Atuin on my thigh. The day after I got it, he died. I may have killed Terry Pratchett. My tattoo artist may be a voodoo artist, and we may have killed him together. My top 10 favourite influential books that influenced me to the startling young woman with crazy hair that you see today. I'm incredible. I'm such a well-read fancy bitch. If anybody would like to share their kind of top influential books, comment and whatnot, I would love to know, and then disagree with you about why your favourite books are wrong because they're not my favourite books and they're not Terry Pratchett books.